Okay, we've got the tower speakers installed up on the tower. Now we're going to do the underdash work of installing the tower speaker amp. I've got Brian Monday here from Malibu Engineering to kind of give us a little walkthrough on that process.
Well,
Brian, first, will you just show us what we're looking at in this particular boat? What have we got here?
okay, what we have here is the Rockford Fosgate black box stereo head unit. We have here in the first amp location a tower speaker amp, which is the P402, and we have a subwoofer amp in the next location. This is a P502. We've got an open spot on our amp board. This is a Sound Pack 1 because it does not have the boat speaker amplifier in it. So it's just the speakers themselves are getting powered directly from the head unit. There is no amplifier for the boat speakers currently in this system.
So, if this boat were a Sound Pack 2 or 3, it would have another 4-channel amp up there that would power the in-boat speakers.
That's correct.
Got it. So, do the speakers need to be located, or pardon me, do the amps need to be located in this location? And more specifically for this video, is that where the tower speaker amp needs to be located?
Yes, the tower speaker amp is a smaller frame than the sub or the boat speaker amp. So we pre-cut the amp boards for the right size of the amplifier. And you know, if you're adding an amp or a tower amp to an amp board, you're going to want to pull the board down, and you'll notice that the plastic's already cut, the holes are already drilled. All you need to do is trim out the carpet so that you can center your amp over the board and screw it down into place.
So there's a big cutout on the amp board to allow heat to radiate out of the bottom of the amp, right?
That's correct.
And so it's important to locate the amp over that hole.
Right, and it is important to cut the carpet out just so that you can keep
so it can breathe better.
Cooling.
Yeah. So don't screw the amp to the board until you've pulled the board out and centered the amp over that hole.
And cut out the carpet.
And cut out the carpet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great. So will you just give us a quick run through on the different wires, where each one comes from? Like, for example, starting with the power wires, the black and red down at the bottom, where does the power come from for this amp?
Well, the power comes from the battery switch. You'll want to come out of the battery switch to a circuit breaker or fuse. Now, depending on whether you're putting a single amplifier in here by itself or you're adding an amplifier to a system that already has an amp or two, that's where you really got to pay attention. If the boat already has a single amp in it, let's say it's got either the boat speaker amp or a sub in here already, just one, you would have 6-gauge cables running directly from the amp over to the fuse and then into the battery switch. If you have 2 amplifiers already in the boat, you should have distribution blocks on the amp board as well, and they're already fed with 2-gauge battery cable. So if you're adding a third amp, it'll be real easy. You just add 6-gauge battery cable to the distribution blocks that we have here and run up to your amp.
Oh, awesome.
If you only have 1 amp in here and you're adding a second, then you're going to have to get distribution blocks and you're going to have to get some 2-gauge cable to power that.
Run the 2-gauge cable from the switch to right there on the board,
right,
and then split them off going to 6-gauge to each of the amps.
Right. And another important thing to remember here is when you're adding amplifiers, you need to go in and increase your fuse or circuit breaker size accordingly as you're adding loads to it.
Where does the blue wire, the remote wire, where does that come from?
The blue remote wire is actually part of the boat harness. It hangs right out of our little white amp connector that hangs down, plugs right into the black box. If you have 1 amp, you can just take and run that directly to the amplifier. But if you have multiple amps, you have to daisy chain the other amplifiers into that circuit.
And the remote wire is simply the wire that turns the amp on when that stereo comes on.
Correct. I mean, once your battery switch is on, your amp is powered, but until the stereo actually comes on and it turns on, you know, it actually powers
That's
up
what fires up
remote
the
wire.
amps. Yeah.
That's what fires up the amplifier,
Okay.
turns on the relay inside the amp.
Awesome. How about the RCAs? Where do the RCAs get their signal from for the tower speaker amp?
Okay, this being a Sound Pack 1, the RCAs would come directly out of the black box, and you'll use the rear channel from the black box into the tower amp. However, if this boat was a Sound Pack 2 and had the boat speaker amp up front, these wires, the rear RCA channel, would already be located up here in the boat speaker amp. And what you would have to do would be unplug those RCAs from the rear channel of your boat speaker amp, relocate them here into the input side of your tower amp,
Okay.
and then you'll have to daisy chain through the pass-through of the tower amp back into the rear input of your 4-channel amp.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah, that makes sense. So the RCAs come out of the rear channels of the black box, plug into the tower speaker amp, and then if it's a Sound Pack 2 or 3, then another RCA goes in those two open ones above the RCAs that are currently plugged in. They go into the two open positions, and those would power the rear channels of the 4-channel amp.
That's correct.
Awesome. And then where will they find the tower speakers when they first get underneath here?
Well, the tower speaker wires that are factory installed in our G3 towers, you'll usually, I believe you'll find them coiled up right here in the corner, right above the black box. One thing you'll want to note is our guys identify the right channel or the starboard channel of the tower speakers with a little bit of masking tape. That's so that we know what side we're connecting here to the amplifier. Our color code is silver is ground, copper is positive, and we use that both with the sub and with the tower speakers. You know, on our boat speakers, they're actually colored and black, but so that's not part of this equation.
Great. So how about if we pull the amp board off and have a look around back and show how it wires
So how we hook this up.
All right, great. Thanks. Okay, Brian, what are we looking at here?
Okay, we've got the stereo board down, and what I wanted to show you was the on this Sound Pack 1 system, we're going to connect RCAs to the rear output RCA of the black box. Again, this is only for Sound Pack 1 system. If this was Sound Pack 2, this would already be connected to the boat speaker amp, and you're going to get your audio source from the pass-through. But this is Sound Pack 1. This is where you're going to get it. And let's just go ahead and run our tower speakers through the little hole provided in the stereo amp board. Now, just so you all know, these boards are pre-cut. We already have the holes pre-cut in the board for your wires, your RCAs, your battery cables, and the large hole, which helps with keeping the amp cool. So you don't have to cut new holes if you're adding amplifiers to one of these boards. It's already set up for 3 amps.
So what you're saying is the tower speaker amp is designed to go exactly where we've shown it here in the rear, over the rear cutout.
Right.
The rear cutout, because the tower speaker amp is smaller than the other amps, right?
Correct.
So
the other two have a bigger cutout for
So
the
the
larger frame amps.
Okay, so the sub amp goes in the middle, and then the forward position is for the in-boat speakers.
Correct.
Okay.
You can actually flip those two around. It's not that big a deal since they're the same size
Okay.
frame amps,
but the
and the
tower speaker goes in the rear.
RCAs
Yeah.
will reach them both.
Okay.
But yes, the tower speakers, or the tower speaker amp, since it's the smallest amp, it would always go in the first or rear position
Okay.
on your amp board.
And it should go over the cutout to aid in cooling of the amp.
Correct.
That's a good point to know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's pretty much all we need to do on the back side. Now I'll go ahead and screw the board back up to the side of the boat and finish up the install.
Okay, great.